Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Charlotte and together with my husband Tom, we produce content on this channel. Together we produce content about DIY, lifestyle and travel, and separately on my own on this channel I produce content about literature, writing, books, all that kind of stuff. I myself am a published writer of women's history, and so I talk about that kind of thing, about what it's like to be a writer, etc, etc. So welcome to the channel if you're new. If you've been here for ages, then hiya everyone. I'm sorry if my beagle picture still reads beagle backwards. I'm recording this on my phone, so I'm not sure whether the word beagle is backwards or not, but I wanted a picture on the wall and that's the only picture I've got framed, so. Right, so today what I thought I would do is a new kind of series that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it's books that I've read in a certain month. And I've kind of wanted to do this for probably the last kind of 6 or 8 months, but I haven't really been prioritising creating content on YouTube. And I want to change that. So I'm doing that now. I'm kind of changing things around a bit. I'm producing content a bit more regularly on writing, books, literature, all that kind of stuff. So this is the first in the new series. And this, I wouldn't say it's not the best one to start with, but it's not particularly prolific in terms of the number of books that I've read this month, because we're only really going to be talking about one book that I've actually read, but I will be discussing the series that this book is part of. So, the book that I read this month was Tombland by Cj Sansom. And I don't know how I can show you how thick this book is. That's my mobile phone case. This is an iPhone 8, something like that. It's nearly as wide as an iPhone. It has got, let's have a look, over 850 pages in it. So it is a tome, it is huge. And that's kind of why there's only one book for this month, because it's taken me all, throughout the entire month of April, this is what I was reading. And it wasn't exactly the type of book that, you know, I was reading a little bit here and there. I was reading this in my spare time, like all my spare time, and there's a lot of spare time during lockdown. And it still took me a month to read. And I'm quite a fast reader as well. That being said, I'm so thrilled that this book was so long. People who know me quite well will know that Cj Sansom is my favourite author. I won't say I prefer him, he's actually my favourite neck and neck, if not slightly more than J.K. Rowling. I know, sacrilege. But he's just absolutely an absolutely phenomenal writer, and if you haven't come across him before, then I highly, highly recommend that you pick up his books. Now, the reason that I said we were going to talk about the series is because Tombland is actually the most recent in the Shardlake series. Now, the Shardlake series is set in Tudor, yeah, just in Tudor England, and it starts in the kind of latter years of Henry VIII's reign, around the time of the dissolution of the Monasteries. And this book is set during the reign of his son Edward, the kind of very brief reign of King Edward. So it kind of spans that time period. I don't know exactly how many years that is, but I think it's supposed to be kind of 10 to 15 years, something like that, because the main character of these books is called Matthew Shardlake, hence why it's known as the Shardlake series. And he is a lawyer who works at Lincoln's Inn in London on Chancery Lane, and he is just the most wonderful character. Sansom's got a really, really good ability to create really well-rounded characters. They're not just characters that are really nice and they're good and they always do the best thing. His Shardlake is a stubborn person sometimes. He doesn't always make the right decisions, and he can be very quick to temper. Obviously, one of the things that they talk about in Tudor times is the humours, the 4 humours, and he's supposed to be quite choleric, which is choleric the right one? Yes, which means he's very quick to anger and gets irritated quite a lot, and that's so true. That's exactly the type of character he is, but underneath all of that kind of stubbornness and that kind of thing is like this deep desire to do the best that he can. And although he's a lawyer, and he actually rises through the ranks as the series goes on to become a sergeant at law, he still is always working for kind of the common man. And that gets him into some scrapes, especially with the powerful people in Tudor London. But yeah, it's just a wonderful series. I mean, Cj Sansom is a lawyer himself, or has been, before he became a writer full-time. And so he's got a really good knowledge of the legal system. He knows what life would be like for a lawyer. Obviously, not in Tudor England, but the kind of the legal background that I think makes books really good. If somebody has a background in a certain area, I think it lends a certain amount of expertise to the writing, and you can really see that in this series. So I'll just briefly, I've got the other ones behind me here. I thought we'd have a quick run through the other books in the series. So I'll just lean back. So I think what I'll do is I'll go through them chronologically, and then I'll tell you how I came across them, because you don't necessarily need to read them in order, but for the purpose of keeping this kind of understandable, I'll show you them in order. So this is the first one that he wrote, which is called Dissolution. You can tell it's kind of the first books. It's a lot smaller, and they do get longer and longer as he goes on making them. You can tell that each time he's written a new one, he gets kind of more into it and more of the world opens up. But this is his first one, and as the title suggests, it's about the dissolution of the monasteries. So this one starts in 1537, so that's the first one, and I think this is 1549. And this one, shall I just read you the back of it, and then you kind of get an idea. So it says, "It is 1537, a time of revolution that sees the greatest changes in England since 1066. Henry VIII has proclaimed himself supreme head of the church. The country is waking up to savage new laws, rigged trials, and the greatest network of informers it has ever seen. And under the orders of Thomas Cromwell, a team of commissioners is sent throughout the country to investigate the monasteries. There can only be one outcome: dissolution. But on the Sussex coast, at the monastery of Scansea, events have spiralled out of control. Cromwell's commissioner, Robin Singleton, has been found dead, his head severed from his body. His horrific murder is accompanied by equally sinister acts of sacrilege. Matthew Shardlake, lawyer and long-time supporter of reform, has been sent by Cromwell to uncover the truth behind the dark happenings at Scansea. But investigation soon forces Shardlake to question everything that he hears and everything that he intrinsically believes." So there you go. So yeah, like kind of many first books, this kind of takes place in one particular location. So at the monastery at Scansea, I don't know how to pronounce that, Scansea? I don't know. Yeah, so it takes place down at this monastery, so you kind of join Shardlake as he goes down there, and he has an assistant with him, and together they try and solve the mystery of Robin Singleton's death. And that's what it is. It's basically a murder mystery book. But the way that it's written is that there's kind of all different kind of court politics going on. A lot of it, obviously Matthew Shardlake is a fictional character, and most of the kind of immediate characters in all of these books are fictional. But you do get loads of factual characters that are kind of woven into the story as well. So for example, Thomas Cromwell is in this book. He acts as the man who kind of sends Shardlake on the mission. And then in later books you have, we'll come to them as I show you the other books, but you have other advisors in one of the later books. Queen Catherine Parr, she sends him out on a mission, and in the latest one it's, well, she was known as the Lady Elizabeth, but obviously we know that she went on to be Queen Elizabeth, but in the last book she's still just the Lady Elizabeth, and she sends him off on his latest mission in the latest book. So there's lots of really like great historical characters that are in there that really kind of build on the wealth of the story and the wealth of the kind of world that you're reading about. So yeah, this is probably one of my favourites, even though it's the first one and probably the one that is the shortest. And like I say, it's quite simple at the first of the series. It's just a murder mystery, but it's really, really good. So if you're looking for a way to kind of get into the series, I would recommend this. Even though it's the first in the series, you don't technically have to read it in this order. I would say it's probably the most accessible of them. And if you are looking for a really good kind of murder, mystery, historical fiction book or series to kind of start getting into, then you might as well start with the first one, really. So that's that. So the next one in the series is called Darkfire. And this is really, really good as well. So this is, if you've ever heard of Greek fire, or dark fire as it's known in this book, it's kind of a mythical substance. It's probably something similar to kind of petroleum, or what else do they say it's similar to? I don't know. When I'm reading stuff like this and I come across like a factual thing, I'm always one of those people who will go onto my phone or go somewhere different and start researching what they're talking about. And I did a load of research on it when I was last reading it, and I can't remember anymore. But yeah, this is, I'll read you the back again. It's 1540 and the hottest summer of the 16th century. Matthew Shardlake, believing himself out of favour with Thomas Cromwell, is busy trying to maintain his legal practice and keep a low profile. But his involvement with a murder case, defending a girl accused of brutally murdering her young cousin, brings him once again into contact with the King's chief minister and a new assignment. The secret of Greek fire, the legendary substance with which the Byzantines destroyed the Arab navies? Sorry. I'll start that bit again. The secret of Greek fire, the legendary substance with which the Byzantines... Byzantine? You know when you have a word and you've only ever read it, you've never said it out loud? I know that word. I know exactly what it means. I know which people they're referring to. But for the life of me, I don't know how it's pronounced. I'm going to keep calling them Byzantines. So, the legendary substance with which the Byzantines destroyed the Arab navies has been lost for centuries. Now an official of the Court of Augmentations has discovered the formula in the library of a dissolved London monastery. When Shardlake is sent to recover it, he finds the official and his alchemist brother brutally murdered. The formula has disappeared. Now Shardlake must follow the trail of Greek fire across Tudor London, while trying at the same time to prove his young client's innocence. But very soon he discovers nothing is as it seems. So this one's a really, really good one. Well, they're all really good ones. I'm going to be saying that a lot. But the thing that I like about this one, and you can tell the kind of progression from Dissolution to this one, is that this is based in London. Some of the other ones he kind of goes to different places, whereas this one itself is based in Tudor London, and all of the action kind of happens in the city. And that's what I really like. I've got a bit of a... I'll say it's a weird fascination, but I've got a real interest in kind of Tudor London history and just London history in general. So I kind of really liked that. One of the things that I think works well in this one at the same time is that there are kind of two storylines that are intersecting each other. One is the search for the Greek fire formula, which is kind of his political thing. He's been told to look for that by Thomas Cromwell. It's kind of very much based on kind of threads of rumour that were going through the court at the time that, you know, Thomas Cromwell was desperate to find this dark fire. England was under threat of invasion from France, and Thomas Cromwell... Oops! Right, well, the beagle picture's come down. We'll continue onwards. No doubt Tom's going to shout up in a second and ask what that massive crash was. Oh, my heart. My heart's proper beating now. My mum and my sister are probably going to have an absolute whale of a time laughing at me jumping to that. Yes, Thomas Cromwell was in trouble. England was at threat of invasion from France, and Thomas Cromwell had fallen out of favour with King Henry VIII and thought that if he could produce the Greek fire formula for the king, then he'd get back into favour with the king, and the king would have a weapon with which to kind of attack the French. So that's kind of Thomas Cromwell's kind of aim, and he set Shardlake to look for this formula. So in a lot of other ways it's a little bit more like a murder mystery again. So there's that story, and then the other storyline is basically, like it says on the back really, there's a young girl who is accused of killing her cousin, and Shardlake kind of investigates that murder mystery as well. And they both weave really well into kind of each other, so it doesn't feel like you're reading two separate stories. It just adds to the richness, I think. So yeah, won't tell you much more about that because we've got a few books to get through. But yeah, really, really good one, and a nice progression from the one before. The next one in the series is Sovereign. This is actually my second copy of Sovereign. My first copy is up there because I can't bring myself to get rid of it. But this one, I actually ended up reading it that much that the cover fell off. So this is my second copy of Sovereign. I think you can just about see it. This one says, Autumn 1541. King Henry VIII has set out on a spectacular progress to the north to attend an extravagant submission by his rebellious subjects in York. Already in the city are lawyer Matthew Shardlake and his assistant Jack Barack. As well as legal work processing local petitions to the king, Shardlake has reluctantly undertaken a special mission for Archbishop Cranmer. Archbishop? Sounded like Sean Connery then. For Archbishop Cranmer, he's undertaken a special mission for Archbishop Cranmer. God, that's a tongue twister. To ensure the welfare of an important but dangerous conspirator who is to be returned to London for interrogation. But the murder of a York glazier involves Shardlake in deeper mysteries, connected not only to the prisoner in York Castle, but to the royal family itself. And when Shardlake and Barack stumble upon a cache of secret documents which could threaten the Tudor throne, a chain of events unfolds that will lead to Shardlake facing the most terrifying fate of the age. So that's really cool because you not only get to see Tudor London, you get to see Tudor York as well at the same time. It's also concerned with, is it called what was it called? Not the Rebellion of the North. What was it called? Pilgrimage of Grace, that was it. It's kind of bit loosely based around the time of the Pilgrimage of Grace as well, and some of the kind of key characters in that are in this book as well. So there's some historical characters linked to that uprising. And this is also based on, it's around the time that Henry VIII was married to Catherine Howard. She's involved in the book a bit. And yeah, it's kind of, I would say that this one is more politically minded than any of the other ones to date. The other two are kind of more murder mystery. They've got a little bit of politics in the periphery, but they're not like really kind of deep into court politics. This one a lot more is. And there's quite a cool kind of climax at the end where Shardlake gets himself into a real spot of bother. Won't tell you what it is, but it's pretty gruesome. And yeah, it's just another really, really good one. You can see that they're starting to get a little bit longer now. As you're kind of getting more into the world and you're getting to know the characters more and the places, and the plots are becoming more kind of complex. The books are getting longer, and to be honest, I just think that's brilliant because you just get so much more information, so much more in depth in the world. So yeah, that's a really good one. This is Revelation, and it says Spring 1543. So you can tell that they're kind of going on by kind of 2 or 3 years each time. We do have bigger jumps in the later books, but in these first ones, they're all kind of going on a few years at a time. So this one says, King Henry VIII is wooing Catherine Parr, whom he wants for his 6th wife. Archbishop Cranmer and the embattled Protestant faction at court are watching keenly, for Lady Catherine is known to have reformist sympathies. Matthew Shardlake, meanwhile, is working on the case of a teenage boy who's been placed in the Bedlam Insane Asylum, and fears that the boy's terrifying religious mania could lead him to being burned as a heretic. When an old friend is horrifically murdered, Shardlake promises his widow that he will bring the killer to justice. His search leads him to Cranmer and Catherine Parr and to the dark prophecies of the Book of Revelation. As London's Bishop Bonner prepares a purge of Protestants, Shardlake, together with Jack Barack and his physician friend Guy Moulton, investigate a series of horrific murders which soon bring talk of witchcraft and demonic possession. For what else could the Tudor mind make of a serial killer? So you can tell that we're kind of still on the same theme as a lot of the other books. It's a murder mystery in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of kind of political stuff that's tied up on this one as well. And yeah, this book kind of looks at that period in time and looks at that conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics at the time and how they were kind of fighting against each other, as well as kind of the changes in reform throughout this time. So yeah, it's I would say probably out of all of them, this is my second to least favourite. We're going to come on to my least favourite in a minute. This is my second to least favourite one. It's good. I mean, it's still one of my favourite books of all time. I would just say that in the series, I think this is probably one of the weakest ones. Just dropped it on the floor. Right, well, it's staying on the floor now. Yeah, so I think it's one of the weaker ones. I don't really know why I would say it's one of the weaker ones. Maybe just the storyline just didn't catch me as much as some of the others did. But it's still a fantastic book, and there's some really cool kind of images of London and kind of the history of the Bedlam I looked into after this because it really piqued my interest. So that's that one. And then the next in the series is Hearthstone. Now this is the first book I ever read of Sansom's. So this is what I mean, you don't have to necessarily read them in the series order. This one was bought for me by Tom's mum. Bought it for Christmas for me one year. Oh, we must be going back now. When was this published? 2010, crikey. So it was probably like 2011, something like that, when she bought me this book, maybe even 2012, because it's obviously a paperback version. And yeah, first one I read in the series, loved it that much that I then went back and bought the first in the series, which was Dissolution, and then worked my way through them. So you can read them as standalone books. If you have one of these randomly on your bookcase and you've never quite kind of read it, but it's always been one of those, oh, I'll pick it up one day, but it's not the first in the series, so, oh, do I have to go out and buy the others? No, just pick it up and delve into it. It kind of fills in the backstory enough that you can kind of know what's going on, but each kind of story is a standalone case anyway, so you can read them on their own. So this one is 1545. England is at war. Henry VIII's invasion of France has gone badly wrong, and a massive French fleet is preparing to sail across the Channel. Meanwhile, Matthew Shardlake is given an intriguing legal case by an old servant of Queen Catherine Parr. Asked to investigate claims of monstrous wrongs committed against his young ward, Hugh Curtis, by Sir Nicholas Hobby, Shardlake and his assistant Barak journey to Portsmouth. There, Shardlake also intends to investigate the mysterious past of Ellen Fetty Place, a young woman incarcerated in the Bedlam. Once in Portsmouth, Shardlake and Barak find themselves in a city preparing for war. The mysteries surrounding the Hobby family and the events that destroyed Ellen's family 19 years before involve Shardlake in reunions both with an old friend and an old enemy close to the throne. Soon events will converge on board one of the King's great warships gathered in Portsmouth Harbour, waiting to sail out and confront the approaching French fleet. This is an absolutely fantastic book if you are interested in the history of the Mary Rose, because that's the ship that they're on about. So I suppose that kind of spoils. I mean, it does tell you it's a great warship. The only thing it doesn't tell you on this blurb is that it's the Mary Rose that sinks. I don't think I'm spoiling any of the storyline there. That's just a peripheral event that happens. It's separate to the main storyline. But yeah, it kind of retells the story of the sinking of the Mary Rose at the end of the book. In the meantime, it's kind of set down in Portsmouth way, so it's kind of a little bit close to Scansea, where the first book was. But it's actually set at a country house, which I love because I write books about stately homes. So I'm kind of, a lot of my interest and my expertise is around country house history. So it's pretty cool that one of my favourite books is set at a country house, and it's very like country house mystery style. What's the film? Gosford Park, it reminded me of, like a Tudor Gosford Park. And there's all these kind of characters that are sequestered at this stately home together. And Shardlake and Barak are trying to work out what's happened, what these monstrous wrongs are that have been committed to this young boy. And yeah, it's a really, really good book. And I have to say, for my first one, I managed to get through it very quickly. And then when I read the others and there was all the context brought into it, it was great. But yeah, this book will hold a special place because it will be the one that kind of introduced me to the world. But interestingly, it's not my favourite in the series. So yeah, another great one. As you can see, it's got bigger again. Yeah, highly recommend. So this one is Lamentation, and you'll notice it's much bigger. I don't know quite how I ended up with a book this size, because I'm a bit of a stickler for, if I have a book in a series, I want them all to kind of like match and be the same size. And it kind of annoys me that that is a bigger, like you can see the comparison, that's a bigger version of a paperback. And then Tombland, which is the latest one, is a hardback. So I'm going to have to buy both of these in the really small paperback when I can. But yeah, this is Lamentation. Summer 1546. Henry VIII is slowly, painfully dying. His Protestant and Catholic councillors are engaged in a final and decisive power struggle. Whoever wins will control the government of Henry's successor, 8-year-old Prince Edward. As heretics are hunted across London and the radical Protestant Anne Askew is burned at the stake, the Catholic party focus their attacks on Henry VIII's sixth wife, Matthew Shardlake's old mentor, Queen Catherine Parr. For the Queen has a secret. She has written a confessional book called Lamentation of a Sinner, so radically Protestant that if it came to the King's attention, it could bring both her and her sympathisers crashing down. When the book inexplicably vanishes and a single page is found clutched in the hand of a murdered printer, Shardlake is summoned to Whitehall Palace to help the desperate Queen. His loyalty will drive him into a swirl of intrigue inside the palace, where Catholic enemies and Protestant friends can be equally dangerous, and the political opportunists who will follow the wind wherever it blows, more dangerous than either. So this is my least favourite in the series, and you would think from that description that it would be really, really interesting, and it is, but I kind of feel like it loses a lot of its pace in a way that the other books really didn't. I'm going to hold it down a bit because it's a very big book, it's quite heavy. Yeah, it loses its pace quite a lot. You kind of get into a certain area and then all of a sudden it kind of switches focus. I can't really explain 100% why this is my least favourite. I just find that where the other books absolutely rivet me and capture me and I get completely lost in the world, I kind of don't with this one, and it's the one that I've read the least out of the whole series. I think I've probably only read it 2 or 3 times, whereas some of them, I mean, Dissolution, I've read like 6 times or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm really like saying that it's a crap book. It's not. It is absolutely fantastic, and I will obviously continue to read it, and it is brilliant in the fact that it kind of ties in the end of Henry VIII's reign, and Shardlake, oh, I was just about to give you a big spoiler then. I won't do that. But yeah, it kind of ties in the end of Henry VIII's reign, and there's a lot more kind of key people in this, and I think historical characters than are in the other one. Yeah, I think the kind of story about how the book disappears and who's responsible for it, that kind of gets a little bit lost in the politics, and the politics side kind of takes over a bit more. Whereas I think the kind of murder mystery stories are the things that actually keep you page turning every time. So it's good, but it's not my favourite. So then we come up to the current one, which is Tombland, which I've just said. This is what I've read throughout April. As you can see, like I said before, it's the biggest one. And I will read you the blurb for this one. It's a much longer blurb though, so I might not read it all. Summer 1549. 2 years after the death of Henry VIII, England is sliding into chaos. The nominal king, Edward VI, is 11 years old. His uncle Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset, rules as protector. The extirpation of the old religion by radical Protestants is stirring discontent amongst the populace, while the protector's prolonged war with Scotland is proving a disastrous failure and threatens to involve France. Worst of all, the economy is in collapse, inflation rages and rebellion is stirring among the peasantry. Since the old king's death, Matthew Shardlake has been working as a lawyer in the service of Henry's younger daughter, the Lady Elizabeth. The gruesome murder of Edith Boleyn, the wife of John Boleyn, a distant Norfolk relation of Elizabeth's mother, which could have political implications for Elizabeth, brings Shardlake and his assistant Nicholas Overton to the summer assizes at Norwich. There they are reunited with Shardlake's former assistant Jack Barak. The three find layers of mystery and danger surrounding Edith's death as a second murder is committed. And then East Anglia explodes as peasant rebellion breaks out across the country. Yeah, this book itself is kind of concerned, it's a murder, it goes back to its classic roots really, it goes back to a murder mystery, and there's a kind of murder mystery story, and then going on in the background is the kind of rebellion of, I'd say the rebellion of the peasants. It's kind of, it's more about the enclosures. So the enclosures in England were where originally manors and kind of estates were held on the kind of feudal system, and they had a lot of common land on them where the kind of people who worked on the land would graze their animals, they would plant their own crops, and it was kind of common land that they could hold and they could make a living off. The enclosures came when a lot of gentry basically got all of their tenants off the land and basically enclosed the land into fields for like grazing sheep, because the price of wool was going up. So yeah, don't know a huge amount about enclosures, so if you want to know more about the enclosures in England, I would suggest you go and research it a little bit more. But as a kind of, they believe that obviously they're all getting pretty angry at these enclosures, and they believe that commissioners are coming to kind of help them out, to help them sort the problem and to give them fair kind of voice for their opinions and their thoughts on it. And it kind of slowly devolves into a rebellion outside Norfolk. Obviously Shardlake's there, he's doing this kind of murder mystery investigation, and then he gets caught up in the rebellion. I don't want to tell you too much about that because it's really interesting, but it's just a really, really good book, and I think one of the beauties of that one being so long is that you see the kind of whole story of the rebellion in Norfolk, and I think that's a really good thing for Sansom to have done, because it's not, he's kind of stressing the importance of telling their story to the audience as much as kind of giving us this cool little murder mystery that's kind of going on in the periphery. He's really showing the full story of the rebellion and how it happened, how it evolved and how it devolved as well. So yeah, I think that's something that works really well in that one. And I would say that's probably one of my favourite ones is Tombland, just because it's so long that you get such a wealth of information. You really get pulled into the story. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, this is my kind of what I read in April with Tombland, whilst also kind of going into a full evaluation of the Cj Sansom Shardlake series. I know it's gone on for a really long time, so if you're still around, then why don't you put an emoji of a book in the comments, and then I'll know that you watched it to the end. And yeah, let me know if you've ever read the series, what you thought of it, which one out of the series is your favourite, and I am already on with reading other things in May at the moment, and yeah, I'll see you again in a month's time with an evaluation of what I read in May. Alright, stay safe, stay home, and I'll see you soon. Bye!